Hello again, you're watching Sky News Breakfast. Time to have a look through the papers. With us to do that, the author and broadcaster Emma Wolf and journalist and author Nikki Hodgson. Good morning to you both. Thank you so much for getting up early on a Sunday morning and joining us. Let's kick off with the Mirror, Nikki. Let's have a look. Let's bring it up. Okay, so Boris missed chances to probe Pincher. Do you want to just talk us through that?
Yeah, so this is an exclusive by Nigel Nelson, and it is basically explaining that Boris Johnson was aware, apparently, of the allegations against Chris Pincher. First, because MPs brought this to his attention, they made complaints about him, and then secondly, because a group of staffers also did. And they actually set up their own campaign group and wrote to the PM about their concerns on May the 24th. So this was a couple of weeks after Neil Parish resigned, that he was the Tory MP that was caught watching porn in the House of Commons. And it just kind of beggars belief, because what seems to keep happening in the Tory party is that people keep doing these things that are, pretty egregious, that in any other workplace they would be in a lot of trouble for doing, and if not sacked immediately. And yet there seems to be a delay in dealing with these allegations, with these rumours, and it's just not good enough, really, frankly.
Okay, Emma, let's have a look at the Telegraph as well, because they've also got this story. And they say that another senior whip actually resigned when the Prime Minister appointed Mr. Pincher.
The allegations in the Telegraph are pretty serious as well, just adding to what Nikki said there. Apparently back in February, when Chris Pincher was appointed, there was general awareness of the allegations, of previous allegations against him. We've seen more and more of them coming out over this weekend. And actually they were so serious, the allegations, that another whip in the whip's office, Chris Whitaker, actually resigned over this. So it was obviously a serious matter. As far back as 2020, Kimberly, the Prime Minister allegedly made a joke about Chris Pincher being rather handsy, and he said Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. I think this really does call into question the Prime Minister's judgment on this. We've seen this before, this drip of the truth coming out about something, and obviously this matter is still under investigation. But we've seen this with Partygate, we've seen it with the Owen Paterson affair, when Boris Johnson defended Owen Paterson against probably his better judgment, probably against good advice. So I think this affair is extremely damaging, not only for Chris Pincher himself and the people involved, but for Boris Johnson and for his judgment.
Yeah, Nikki, what do you think? How damaging do you think this could all be for the PM? I mean, it's in most of the papers, isn't it?
Well, there's a very practical point that if Chris Pincher is to resign, that will trigger a by-election in Tamworth, his constituency. And obviously we've seen what's happened in Wakefield recently. And, the Tories cannot afford to lose another by-election. But it's very, very tricky for Boris Johnson, because if he lets Chris Pincher stay in position, he's going to be seen to not tackle the problem. And if there is a by-election triggered, that could be the beginning of the end of the Tory party in power, and very much start to hand over power to Labour or even the Lib Dems come the next general election.
Do you think, more broadly, Emma, this again asks questions again about the culture at Westminster and what it's like to actually work there?
I really do, Kimberly. This is my main beef with this story, is not specifically what happened on Wednesday night, but the fact that someone in the middle of a working week can be, by his own admission, so drunk. People say that he was almost unable to speak, that he was literally sort of falling all over the place. Okay, it wasn't on the Palace of Westminster premises. There are lots of bars in Westminster, we know that. But it was, a senior member of the government who is working, drinking that much, and then presumably expecting to go into work on Thursday. These are serious times. We need serious people. And I think the drinking culture, quite apart from the allegations about groping and sleaze, I think the drinking culture needs to be looked at, because I don't want people serving us who are trying to operate with a stonking hangover and really not functioning at their best. We know what alcohol does, and it doesn't serve you well.
Okay, let's turn to the Observer now, and this is all about the claim by the PM that 40 new hospitals, I think that's the key, isn't it, that there were going to be new hospitals, were going to be built by 2030. The Watchdog is launching an inquiry, isn't it, Nikki?
Yeah, so the official spending watchdog, the National Audit Office, is investigating this claim by Boris Johnson that 40 new hospitals were to be built by 2030. The reason being because actually on examination of the detail, what it seems is that there are new wings of hospitals being built, there are refurbishments being done, but there are not 40 new hospitals. So it sounds like it's very misleading. And, the problem with this is that this was actually a cornerstone policy of the 2019 Conservative Party General Election Manifesto, this pledge for 40 new hospitals. So if it turns out that it's not to be true, or it's been an exaggeration of the truth, yet again, it calls into question Boris Johnson's judgment, his integrity, his ability to tell the truth about all kinds of matters, and yet again, it's just very damning for him.
Let's have a look at the Express, Emma, because this is this claims that there's a cabinet battle underway, and in many ways, this isn't a great headline for Boris Johnson either, is it? Boris told we need tax cuts now.
He's not getting great headlines at the moment at all. He just can't be right for doing wrong. Yeah, so this is apparently, Kimberly, a cabinet battle is underway with the pro-tax cutting people saying to the Prime Minister and to the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, look, we need tax cuts now. They're saying the British people are not fools. If you suddenly roll out tax cuts before the next election, that's just going to be seen as a pre-election gimmick. And also, if tax cuts are good for the economy and good for the cost of living crisis, then they should happen as soon as possible. These calls are coming from across the Tory party, from left and right. They're coming from people like Ian Duncan-Smith, John Redwood, Damien Green, and many others. And they really feel that something needs to be done sooner rather than later to actually help people with the looming cost of living crisis.
Nikki, what do you think? Because, for the past 2 weeks, he's been on the world stage, really where the PM is in his element, and he's always championed, whenever he's asked about what's happening at home, he's always championed the line, we're doing everything we can to help people. But do you think more needs to be done, and we do need to see these tax cuts?
Well, the thing is, the very fact that we're having strike action indicates just how annoyed people are with the situation. And the fact is that promising tax cuts that will also come next year, which is one of the headlines that we had last week, is too little too late. So, the cost of living crisis needs to be tackled now, or the Tories will lose the general election on it.
Really? Do you think they will? Emma, what do you think? Do you think they'll lose it on that?
I think that... Look, I'm not going to predict. Who knows?
Who knows anything these days?
Who knows when it's going to be, Kimberly? But who knows what's going to happen in the next 2 years? I would be a fool to predict it. But I think definitely that we need to target to help to people more in a smarter way. I think something will be done and something needs to be done. But if they lose the next election, there are quite a lot of things they could be losing it on.
Okay, let's have a look at, what is it? The Times. Such a great picture. Let's have a look. Yes, there we go. Pride Parade in London, 50 years. It's interesting to look back and think, okay, 50 years has passed, but it's quite troubling to think that so much more actually needs to be done, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic picture. I think it was a fantastic day out for lots of people yesterday. And, it's very important to remember that the Pride Parade itself has been quite contentious over the past few years. Pride London has had difficulties with the organising, then there was the pandemic. So it's wonderful to see such a big turnout. And it's very special to London, I think, is Pride. But I think what is disturbing is the fact that we are still debating some key issues around equality, particularly around trans rights. There is the conversion therapy bill, which does not include the protection of trans people, as Peter Tatchell pointed out in your report. And just in general, Boris Johnson seems to not always get to grips with the matter of trans rights and the fact that people are just kind of waiting for full equality in a way that instead there are still debates about, the Cabinet Office and civil servants using language which excludes women, for example. It's very, very thorny and very, very difficult, the arguments around trans rights at the moment. But Boris Johnson really needs to fully tackle them. It's interesting that Theresa May came out this week and said that actually, given her time again, she would vote differently on some key issues of equality.
Yeah, equality, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. The most troubling thing for me in the papers, we've got very short time to do it. Emma, why are we being told to wash less?
Wash less, do less laundry. So this is the promised heat wave, and I don't know where it is because it keeps being promised to us.
Exactly. We've got 20 seconds.
It's not a barbecue summer anymore, it's bikini summer. So to avoid water shortages, we need to wash less and do less laundry.
The web
And,
key is watch less, wear deo, is all I can say. Emma and Nikki, thanks a lot. We'll see you next hour. Still to come here on Sky News Breakfast, a lot more about the suspension of MP Chris Pincher.